Hi Virgo, it's Jen here. So the focus card we have is the Hierophant, and this is a card about um, how we receive messages, where our inspiration comes from. And you could have the energy of this spiritual leader, or you could be seeking the energy of the spiritual leader. And another thing I like to point out with this card is that it isn't always like a person that you go to or wisdom that you solicit um, that you gain. That's how you gain that sort of wisdom. It often can come about in many different ways. For example, um, you could just be standing in a grocery store and someone will say something, next to you, and it will just sort of, for some reason, click, and you'll just have this experience where sort of things click into place and you see things in a completely different light. So, um, this isn't strictly a authority figure in like a religion at all. It's a much broader card than that. So maybe really starting to develop your spirituality. Maybe you'll find a teacher or find a book or something will inspire you, or you'll really gain some deep, deep insight and wisdom from a situation. And at the bottom of the deck, you have the Six of Wands, which is known as the victory card. So something that you're passionate about is you're being successful. And, you have to think about, what is victory? How do you measure success? So this could just be something, and I'll use myself as an example. I just, even though I finished in December, there was a mix-up, so I didn't actually get my diploma until today. I went and picked it up today, and I shared it with my son. And it's not like I'm not going to put it on Facebook. I'm not, you know what I mean? It's just like, it was a victory for me. My undergrad career was pretty bad, and I barely graduated, and I just graduated with a graduate certificate with straight A's. So that's my own, and now I'm telling you guys, please, I'm not saying that so you guys will leave comments. It's just like, for me, it was a true inner victory that I could be successful in college, because I did really well in high school, and college, for many different reasons, including a health issue, was really bad for me. And it was like, here I am 25 years later, and I conquered that. I was victorious. I kicked college's ass. So it's that kind of thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be accolades from outside. It can be from within. And I think this card is always a nice reminder to count your wins, no matter how big or small. And just because it may be like, yeah, who doesn't, it's just a certificate, it's not a master's, blah, blah, blah. Sure, there's always people who will do more and better and greater, but for me, it was a big deal. And so whatever is meaningful to you, make sure that you don't diminish that with outside influences. You be proud and claim those victories. So I'm doing 4 sets of cards, 4 sets of pairs of cards. Did I say that right? So these first 2 cards are going to be career. The Knight of Swords, so a change in thinking, a change in communication. Oh, and the Empress. Well, that's a pretty nice card. It's an interesting card to get in the work category, because it's a very fruitful, well, it's actually, now that I'm saying fruitful, but it's more of a nurturing card, and oftentimes, like, if you think about in business is very sort of planning and implementing. So it's sort of forcing or making things happen, where the Empress's energy is more nurturing, and it sort of guides and encourages, instead of says, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, this needs to be done better, whatever. She just sort of sees where people's strengths lie and encourages it, and is there for support. And it's a very good strategy for her. So it's kind of interesting as I'm talking through the card, I'm thinking maybe in career, maybe there are some people around you that need more of this type of energy if you're a leader or even just a coworker. And you may find that you get a lot more work out of them if you try approaching them in the way the Empress would. And that may take a change in thinking because just like I was just saying, in the workplace, it's usually much more methodical and just the facts and data driven and just very sort of performance driven. And maybe you can get better performance out of people if you change your thinking by nurturing and being a little more supportive. So that might be a nice energy to bring into your business life and see how that works. It might be just with certain people. I know that's happened with some of the people I've worked for, no matter how professional and stuff I've asked for stuff, just it's like their job and I needed to go through them. I would get resistance, and I learned to really sort of just try another approach and be super friendly and super, kind of go over the top, but now they'll really help me out and they don't. So maybe I was coming across harsher than I realized. I mean, you never know what people's experiences are and how they perceive you and perceive things. So maybe try to mix it up a little in the workplace this month. So these next two cards are home life, sort of outside of work life. Nine of Swords. So there's a little bit of worry or insomnia for some reason. But then you have the Sun card. Interesting. So the swords are mental energy. And I know for me, it's amazing how like one little comment, one little thing can happen. And it can have me up all night worrying and, be all consuming and become completely blown out of proportion. And at the time, it seemed like a really super big deal. But in the grand scheme of things, it was just so minor and is so insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and even in the small scheme of things. One exercise that I used that was actually really helpful for me is that something would happen and I would get really worried about it, and so I'd write it down and I would try to compartmentalize it even and just try to let it go as much as I could. But at first, though, I think I would just write down what happened, like you put it in Outlook, or if you still have like a paper-based calendar or something. And what I would do is I would go back like a month later, or even a week later, and I would read through these things that have happened that set me off. And half the time, like it had been long forgotten. And it's like, is this going to matter in a week, in a month, in a year? And as upsetting as it may seem at the time, when you really start doing those exercises and challenging the validity of the reaction that you're having to the situation, it often doesn't hold up. And so it allowed me to release things and situations and worries because I knew, okay, you're being ridiculous. This really doesn't matter. So the Sun card, enlightenment, seeing things clearly. Sometimes it can talk about children. So if you've been worried, looking back at that Nine of Swords, about your children, it's, I was worried about, I have a 10-year-old at this point, but a few years ago, I was really just sort of, having super mom worries, really Nine of Swords type energy. And I pulled a tarot card and I got the Seven of Pentacles. And I'm totally going off on a tangent here, but the Seven of Pentacles, the lesson or the meaning of that card is, the traditional way to explain it is, okay, you're a farmer and you prepare the ground and you plant your seed and you fertilize and you water, and then you just have to nurture, going back to the Empress, and wait for it to grow. And nothing you do is going to make those crops grow. I mean, sure, you can nurture them as much as possible, make sure they get the right amount of sunlight, make sure they get the right amount of water, that they're protected, all of that stuff. But in the end, there is just a certain amount of time it's going to take for those crops to grow, and there's not a damn thing you can do that's going to make it happen any faster. So sitting there and like yelling at the crops or pleading with the crops or begging or crying or threatening or, whatever you could possibly do, having a temper tantrum is going to make the plants grow any faster. And so it was the same thing with, and I just had this like an aha moment, like, kids, he's 8 years old, Jen. Calm down. Like, he's not supposed to have this right. He's not even going to get it for another 10 years. And then how many people do you know at 18 are fully mature and have their stuff figured out? I'm 45. I still don't have my stuff figured out in any, you know what I mean? So it's sort of this, it was just this very enlightening moment about relax, let it go. It's okay. It's a process. And there's value in that process. That process needs to happen because that's how people learn. That's how they gain the wisdom, going back to the Hierophant. So I kind of went off on a tangent there, but that message is for someone, and you can apply that potentially to different parts of your life. So let's go to relationships. The Knight of Cups, a change in emotions, and the Seven of Swords. I mean, on a very superficial level, what comes to mind is that you're going to feel differently about someone because they're going to do something that makes you question them. And, this happens if you're single, it can be if you're just dating someone or past. And so you really think about, have I let stuff go? Am I open? Am I open to new relationships coming in? And then if you're in a relationship, I do see that perhaps you may have a change in emotions because they may do something that makes you question them, where you're kind of like, this is making me question them and what I thought about them. Okay, this is often, sometimes I say this is the card about other people behaving badly and how, other people behave badly. You can't control other people, but you can control your reaction. Do you let it drag you down to their level, or, how do you handle that? It's just a good thing to think about, and to really examine, like, really in real life, how have you dealt with it? Have you dealt with it well? Have you gotten dragged down to their level? So I kind of see this mirroring back now too, also to the Nine of Swords and the Sun card, of kind of like having some mental anguish about something and just coming to a realization, and seeing things clearly. And you may need to let some of you may need to let some relationships go. Some of you may realize that your behavior is no better than this other person's. And if you change your behavior, you may get a different outcome from other people. You can't control other people, but how they perceive you and how you interact with them may or may not influence the situation. Sometimes you need to go through those trial and error ways of dealing with people and to see if you can make it work or not. And then, if you really truly feel like you've tried, well, then at least you've tried. And the last two cards are some overall spiritual wisdom growth cards. So we have the Page of Swords and the Four of Swords. Yeah, so really needing a break. This is my give yourself a break card. Calming your thoughts, meditating, letting things go, cutting cords, not cluttering your mind with worry or anxiety, trying to control other people, and taking almost a more passive, I'm looking at Empress again and that Hierophant, a more passive and sort of observing role and nurturing role, instead of trying to force and think things through to figure out how you can make them work. Sometimes things just have to evolve, or you just have to let them take their course and see what happens, and take a little bit of a step back from the situation. Okay, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you at the next video. Take care.